Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update on the world of cannabis. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And then of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and then take advantage whenever you're ready. But we're going to start with our favorite thing to get at the beginning of a new month, the Illinois adult use cannabis monthly sales figures. And for the month of July, we can see that they sold a record number of items, over 2.8 million, for in-state resident sales of 85.4 million, out-of-state resident sales 42.3 million, for a total of 127.7 million, up from 115 the previous month. And so as we saw sales last month decrease by about $1 million, it was nice to see the sales increase by about $12 million. So clearly people that had stocked up before previously had to go buy more of what they wanted. But this just goes to show that if we compare it to July last year, that's over 100% gain year over year. So that's very positive. Great to see that out of Illinois, because the main thing we want to look to see that sales are continuing to grow in the top states that have just legalized. And the great news on top of that, just to remind you, Illinois awarded 70 permits in flurry of adult use cannabis business licenses. So Illinois regulators on Monday issued 70 additional adult use cannabis licenses, including permits to an initial 32 craft cultivators, 28 to processors, and 10 to transporters. More than 80% of the licenses issued fall under the category of social equity ownership, as the state tries to make good on its pledge to diversify the industry and provide opportunities to individuals and communities most harmed by the war on drugs. And so the thing is, they're doing 3 lotteries. This was the first of the 3, but in total they're going to hand out about 185 extra licenses, which means that's another 185 stores that will be available to open up in Illinois, which can then eventually add to more sales, because the more stores, more legal access points, the more sales you take away from the black market, and the larger the total addressable market ends up becoming. So this is great news. And so the 2 remaining lotteries are scheduled for later dates in August, so we'll relay that information as the news comes out. But this is great because it again allows for more growth in Illinois for existing MSOs there, and it lets the small business entrepreneurs and people affected by the war on drugs get their chance to start their own sort of entrepreneurial journey and get their piece of the pie in this industry, because there's plenty to go around. On to this one from Todd Harrison: sharpen your pencils, cannabis earnings cometh. That is true, as IIPR, which is a real estate investment trust, will start today after market. And then on Friday we've got 2 Canadian LPs, Canopy Growth and Kronos Group. They will be reporting on Friday, and then we've got the big dog MSOs coming next week. So this is very exciting, because obviously what we get to do is check, have these companies executed like they said they are, and then we get to see what sort of progress they're being made. But I have no doubt that these sales are going to be strong, and this is again just one thing as an investor. As these earnings come out, you want to go through them, try and pick through and get as clear of a story as you can to make sure that your previous plan is still sound and makes sense, or whether you should change it based on some new information you found in there. And then we've got this one from Showerhandle81. Just thought it was a cool graphic, wanted to share year to date as of end of July 2020. We've got this cool little visual that shows us a good majority of the MSOs, which ones from the start of this year are up and which ones are actually down in share price. And so this is not to say that you should just buy the ones at the bottom. Honestly, if you were to hold for a long period of time, it would probably do you well. But again, that's not advice. Just pointing out that the fact is, when things fall quite far and we have an upcoming catalyst like the safe banking, that's reason to believe that if you were just have the patience to hold, you would see some decent results. But again, that's not advice. So make sure you do your research. But again, this is just a cool way to look at the same MSOs differently. The more data we have, the better picture that we can create ourselves. And then Todd Harrison, again, this one from Cantor on cannabis. So again, thank you, Todd, for sharing this. US MJ sales should double by the end of 2023. Wow, that's a big deal based on the current framework. So investment summary: MJ sales could double by the end of 2023 estimates, but keep an eye on the New York template. Even without changes at the federal level, we think that the US MSO group should benefit from continued sales growth at the state level as rec sales continue to expand in place with rec programs and new states begin rec sales or expand their med programs. We project sales of $36 billion by 2023, up from $17 billion in 2020. So that's a big deal. Also, for now, at least, the economics for MSOs remain rather favorable in states with restrictive licensing schemes that results in EBITDA margins often twice or more of those seen in the less restrictive Western states. All this said, we will keep an eye on how New York legalizes rec, as it could be the template that others follow. Talk of as many as 1,000 MJ retail licenses being issued, plus the state's 700 existing vape shops being allowed to sell MJ, plus standalone online vendors intrastate could affect retailer dispensary economics, sales per store, and margins. In our view, although it would probably be a boon for those with cultivation capacity to serve the increasing demand, depending also on how many cultivation licenses are issued. Net, yes, sales doubling by 2023 would be good news for the industry even without federal level changes. though these could also be disruptive if interstate trade is allowed. But let us all pay attention to how long the current restrictive licensing system lasts, as New Jersey only has 19 stores at present, and on paper, it would eventually have 30 stores, given that the 10 active licensees are allowed 3 stores each. So that is some insight from Cantor. Good to see that sales should double sooner than expected, so that is a lot better than previous estimates. And obviously, the more states that legalize increases the total addressable market, so that helps. And there's a lot more states to come, so thank you for that one from Cantor. Then this one from Matt McGinley at Needham. Again, thank you, Todd, for providing this. But this does go to show that on the 1st of January 2021, these MSOs were trading at a 16x enterprise value to EBITDA. On February 10th, which was the peak, where Maya Fria had literally brought my investment portfolio to $150,000. And yes, I would have been wiser to sell a huge chunk of shares then, but you know, the euphoria got the best of me again. It's a very good lesson. Always learn from your mistakes. But that was when they were at their high, 26x enterprise to EBITDA, now back down to 13. So again, this is the time to start accumulating if you have not already, but obviously do your research so that you feel comfortable and understand enough to actually, put your money in here and sleep well at night. But what does Needham have to say, and what insights can they possibly provide? So U.S. industry fundamentals remain strong. We estimate that second quarter U.S. industry revenue was 41% year over year, but expect the dollar growth among MSOs to be more second half 2021 weighted as capacity addition becomes operational and previously announced deals close. Balance sheets remain in good shape with less than $2.5 billion capital raised by larger MSOs in late 2020 and early 2021. As an overreaching statement on the group, companies with pending M&A generally possess the capital to complete the transaction, and we have few concerns about funding CapEx this year or next. While cash tax payments will likely reduce cash flow generation in Q2, we expect a few of the larger MSOs to reach the point where they could self-fund growth at a similar pace to 2021 with internally generated cash flow in 2022. That's a big deal because that gets them very close to profitability if they can fund themselves and don't need to raise money. MSOs have seen a 66% decline in trading volume since peaking in January, but volume has been stable for the last 3 months with a modest sequential improvement in July. And just to add, we know why there was a decline in the trading volume, as hedge funds were de-risking after February, and then U.S. banks and foreign banks were not allowing custodianship, which means they were not buying these shares so that their customers could buy them from the banks. So that's one reason why it's good to see a modest sequential improvement in July, and hopefully that improves as we move on through the year. MSO full-year EBITDA estimates increased by 57% since the start of 2021. Full-year one valuation started 2021 at 16 EBITDA enterprise value to EBITDA and peaked at 26 in February before declining to 13 at present. So there's no reason to believe that it won't get back to 26x minimum when there's some sort of Safe Banking Act catalyst, even without it, because clearly they were at that point before in February. And if the companies just continue to grow and their share prices fall, it just makes them more attractive the lower the prices fall. Good thing to wrap your head around, because that is the premise of investing. Now, on to Todd Harrison, AGP on Cannabis, second half of 2021 outlook. So this is the last one I'll provide. Ahead of calendar second quarter 2021 earnings, we take a look at the cannabis landscape for the back half of the year. We see 2021 as having fewer clear catalysts compared to 2020, i.e. the election, with sector catalysts dependent on what Congress, and more specifically the Senate, looks to do with current cannabis legislation. And we continue to see a bolstered SAFE Act bill, i.e. capital markets and 280E, as a bull case scenario to boost the sector. Again, we don't know when, but at this point, it's not a matter of if. It's just a matter of when. So it's just important to be patient, accumulate if you can, and do whatever you can to make cash flow so that you don't need to sell your investments to get the money out. Meanwhile, we look for fundamentals to remain strong among MSOs with clear state legalization catalysts coming. Within Canada, we see growth accelerating in the back half with the competitive landscape remaining intense. Interesting to add, as I've not been looking at Canada very much, as I'm anticipating a lot from the US, but obviously these LPs are on major US exchanges, so they still get access to a lot more capital than these MSOs would. And sorry, last one from Todd. Boris at CGF. So this was from yesterday, apparently. Canaccord Genuity, Cannabis Panel, Near-Term Growth Markets. Boris at CGF. We have the votes in the Senate for safe banking. Will take time. Expects spring of next year. Now take this with a grain of salt though, because he can't give us a conclusive timeline. He doesn't really know. And wouldn't you rather him say that it's coming next year and then it surprise us and come early, as opposed to him saying that it's coming in the fall for sure, and then it doesn't come in the fall and it goes a bit longer. So I think it's wise for Boris to give us a bit of a longer timeline. And regardless, if it doesn't come until spring next year, that's fine. Pay us now or pay us more later. Regardless, if the share prices fall even more, that just makes for a better deal. And ultimately, he's giving us some sort of a timeline, but I think as someone experienced in business, he's not trying to give us anything definitive. He's aiming far out and the odds are more likely that it might come sooner than that. Again, this is just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know. But again, if it does end up only coming in the spring of next year, save up as much cash and accumulate as much as you can, because again, the lower the share prices fall, the more attractive these companies become, especially as they continue to execute, grow their fundamental sales numbers, grow their earnings, and grow their markers closer to profitability. On to this article from GreenEntrepreneur, 3 cannabis stocks you should know about in August. So I'm not going to go through this because they cover stocks that I have mentioned many times. But if you've watched many episodes and you see names pop up, here are some names that have popped up again on another one of these lists. So cannabis stocks to watch in 2021. This article provides you with Green Thumb Industries and Curaleaf Holdings. So if you want to grab this link to read more about these companies, they are down there below. But there are a lot of these articles. I just want to show you what some of these sites are mentioning as the top companies. Obviously, there are many different sites with many different opinions. That's why you can use what they provide to do your own research and come to your own conclusion. While I did just want to add this, because Weed Street 420, thank you for providing this, did share this Cowen Outperform rating on TLRY price target. So again, as much as I'm focusing on MSOs, that's my plan, but it does seem that TLRY has fallen from this price. And again, what we saw last week after TLRY's earnings, if Cannabis and Cronos is a lot worse than TLRY's, they could see, some money flow into them. And again, they're on the US exchanges, on the NASDAQ, so they can have US capital investors get in there. But TLRY is the most profitable Canadian LP, with adjusted EBITDA larger than the next 3 most profitable peers combined. And that is a fact. So if you did want to venture and trade with any Canadian LPs, again, not advice, but TLRY seems to be the best, and you can pause here if you want to read through this, or of course you can grab the link below. Then on to this one from MJ Biz Daily. Great news as California cannabis markets keep growing as more cities, counties embrace MJ. Now, I was a bit confused because I thought, well, hasn't California already embraced MJ? Don't you have to smoke cannabis if you're from California? Well, scores of California cities and counties are preparing to issue a variety of cannabis business licenses or are writing ordinances to award permits. A look at where retail licenses might land, you can see on the map here. But this is the thing that I learned reading through this. In June, a cannabis shop opened in Union City in the San Francisco Bay Area. Typically, a cannabis store debut isn't news in the state. But this one, run by Grupo Flor, a vertically integrated operator based in Salinas, is located in a prime spot, a shopping center called Union Landing, which features a Walmart, a Best Buy, a Burlington Coat Factory, and more. That's a drastic shift. Not long ago, most cities would force cannabis retailers into less desirable industrial zones, as if the cannabis industry represented an eyesore. Of course, they would think that, and clearly we found out that it doesn't. What it exemplifies to Grupo Flor CEO Gavin Cogan is a wider metamorphosis in California, reflecting scores of new cannabis markets and business opportunities for cultivators, manufacturers, retailers, testing labs, and other MJ businesses around the state. And this is great because California is the largest cannabis market in the world. Several factors are driving this. Stigmas surrounding cannabis continue to recede across California and the nation as more states legalize recreational medical cannabis. California cities and counties now acknowledge the economic benefits of legal cannabis. I don't know if you saw the video a few weeks back where I covered, but real estate valuations go up where you open dispensaries because clearly it does lead to better quality of living, which was just funny to find out, but clearly people didn't think that. Now they're realizing that, like, oh crap, we got to open cannabis stores. The same local governments must grapple with budget shortfalls related to the coronavirus pandemic. There are not only new communities embracing cannabis, but they're embracing it in their retail zones, Kogan said. Before, they had them in their industrial and airport zones because they were fearful of problems, crime primarily. Now they've realized there isn't even a crime issue, and they get higher revenues and higher sales with more of a retail presence. How awesome. So glad California did this first to find out. Now cities are more comfortable putting cannabis on Main Street, Kogan said. It's a major cultural shift, big time. That means that there will likely be even more openings for new cannabis businesses across California in the years ahead as additional cities and counties embrace the industry. That should harden any entrepreneur hoping to tap California's immense cannabis market, which the 2021 MJ Biz Factbook projects will approach $7 billion in retail sales by 2025 versus around $5 billion this year. And obviously, if they allow more stores to open in prime retail locations, that will drive the sales higher as well. So that's great to hear out of California. And then lastly, why cannabis is part of the future of big tobacco. Now, I just want to say this outright. I don't think any cannabis CEO wants big tobacco involved, but the fact is big tobacco sees that they can't beat cannabis, so they have to join them. And that is good for us investors because, again, it shows that Americans are voting with their dollars, shows that by following the money, this is happening, right? It's happening in legal states. That being said, I just want to use this to highlight the state of tobacco today and then what these tobacco companies think their future in cannabis is going to be like. Because, again, I don't think MSOs, CEOs want them involved in any sort of way. So it's going to be interesting, and they're likely going to end up entering Canadian companies as opposed to US MSOs. But let's see what they said. When Philip Morris International CEO Jacek Olczak told the Mail on Sunday that the UK government should treat cigarettes like petrol cars and ban them in 10 years, many wondered why the world's biggest tobacco company would self-sabotage itself with such a draconian statement. However, a few days later, the British-American tobacco executive Kingsley Wheaton told BBC Radio 4's Today program that cannabis and its derivatives are part of the company's future. Yeah, because no one wants to just kill themselves anymore. And I mean, hey, people can be allowed to buy cigarettes and do that if they want. But people are waking up to the fact that, yeah, this is not a smart habit in the long run. I think CBD vaping is part of the future, but the present challenge is reduced harm in tobacco and nicotine alternatives, encouraging people to switch, he said. Both statements from the top world's biggest tobacco companies reveal an ongoing business model shift of big tobacco. Also, they reveal a reaction to consumer trends, which is mind-blowing, and I don't know how America doesn't see this as a problem for the youth. It's just disgusting to think in the past how they kept cannabis illegal because they have to save the kids. And then let's take a look at this. By taking into consideration the health impact of their products, tobacco companies are trying to show their effort to get away from traditional tobacco cigarettes. Vapor and heated tobacco products have become a trend in recent years. The use of e-cigarettes among high school students increased from 11.7% to 28% between 2017 and 2018. How's that not a huge problem that should be addressed with some sort of regulations and overhaul? Such increase is driving overall tobacco use among high school students to 31.2%, according to a report by Truth Initiative, a nonprofit tobacco control organization. But you have to ask yourself, why is 30% of America's youth choosing to smoke? Why on earth do they think that it's good for you, or why on earth do they think it's a good habit to start at a young age? Now, it's possible they'll get it out of their system early, and that's a very plausible approach, but just at the same time, it goes to show that if 30% are smoking, 30% of parents, what kind of example are the majority of parents setting? Now, again, hey, I don't have kids. I'm not a parent because I know it's the hardest job in the world, but just, this seems like an issue, and this seems like something to be addressed. But regardless, let's see what they think that they can do and how they think they can get into this industry. The interest of big tobacco in the cannabis industry is not only visible in business operations, but also through lobbying operations. As Cannabis Wire reported, tobacco company Altria lobbied on cannabis sales in Virginia. This achievement marks the first time that a tobacco company has lobbied on cannabis in the U.S., either at the state or federal level, according to Cannabis Wire. Furthermore, Altria spokesperson George Parman told Cannabis Wire that the company supports the federal legalization of cannabis under the appropriate regulatory framework, one that likely benefits them. But regardless, this just goes to show that cannabis is here to stay. Americans are voting with their dollars, and tobacco's decided if we can't beat them, it's time to join them. So, hey, I mean, that's good conviction for cannabis sticking around, but at the same time, yes, it is a fact that some other forces that we likely don't want in the cannabis industry are going to try to creep in, and it's up to the consumer to, be intelligent and, not support companies that want to partner with big tobacco or just, some sort of just using your discretion. But big tobacco is increasingly becoming a player in the industry. However, it needs time to assess the weight of tobacco companies in the cannabis sector, taking into consideration the hectic development of the cannabis regulatory framework, not only in the US, but all over the world. And again, this comes from someone who is a former smoker, and thankfully I was able to quit, and at the time I thought it was cool, and it felt good, especially when I drank, right? And alcohol is always the gateway drug. You start drinking, then you're like, oh, I want a pack of cigarettes. But over time, I realized that I would wake up sweating, I couldn't sleep well, my breath, my cardio had gotten worse, so it was just one thing where I quit cigarettes. It really made a difference, and, I've never looked back. So that's just one thing to provide some insight, but also just another reason as to industries that can't beat them from lobbying are now starting to join cannabis. So if this does not lead you to believe that there is conviction and that this plant is here to stay and that we are going to free the plant and that SAFE is going to pass, it's just a matter of when, not if. All of these signs lead us to believe that the best time to start accumulating is now. And again, not advice. Make sure you do your research. That is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. If you want to grab any of the stories mentioned or the links, they are below in the description. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns on anything mentioned or just in general, let me know in the comments so that we can have a discussion and I can fill you in or at least try to answer any questions that you have. Besides that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it, subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great day, everybody.